Okay. All right, Marie, let's go live. All right, Madam Chair, we are now live.
Thank you. I call the October 4th special meeting to order. Thanks to all of you for joining us virtually today for this special meeting for an executive session and then possibly public discussion and possible board action. Ms. Maramba, would you please call the roll?
Board Member Durham.
Here.
Board Member Skarziga.
Here.
Board Member Esser.
Here.
Board Member McClellan.
Here.
Board Member Rankin.
Here.
Board Member Shuffle.
Here.
Board Member Schroeder.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. So Ms. Maramba, would you please call and announce an executive session?
Yes, ma'am. An executive session has been noticed for today's state board meeting in conformance with section 24-64023A2 CRS to confer with an attorney concerning Adams 14 School District for this board's order dated September 10th, 2021.
Thanks so much. Do I have a motion to convene into exec session?
So moved.
Thank you. Any opposed? Great. So I apologize. I don't know exactly when the board will be back. I'd advise you to keep your browser open and up. We know we'll be in executive session for at least 45 minutes and then hope to be back for discussion and possible action. Ms. Maramba.
Okay, Corey, if you could cut the live stream, please. Hold on
Sorry.
one second.
And is board member, oh, yeah, okay. I see everybody.
Everyone's here, okay.
So I just got a note. I wish I had 3 devices so that I could see. 1 second, please.
All right, Madam Chair, we are live now, so we can just pause and wait for you.
Thank you. I am back. I apologize. I have to keep going back and forth when I'm getting notes. As you know, on September 10th of 2021, we ordered that by September 27th, Adams 14 School District must return to full compliance with our 2018 order. That order required Adams 14 to restore the authority and access of its approved lead partner and to restart the work that was in progress prior to the district's August work stoppage of its manager's staff. In addition, the board directed the district and its lead partner to confirm that restart in writing by sending a joint statement to the State Board office on or before October 1, 2021. Unfortunately, we did not receive last Friday a joint statement. Instead, we received only a submission from the district stating that it returned MGT's decision-making authority and restarted the work that was in progress under the party's management contract. This means that they were back in schools. The district reported that MGT refused to sign a joint written statement unless the district agrees to several unreasonable conditions in a separate written agreement. On September 10, our September 10 order stated that if we didn't receive the joint written statement by October 1, the stay of the removal of the district's accreditation shall lift, and the district's accreditation will be removed effectively immediately. So as we meet today, Adams County School District 14 is unaccredited. In its submission on Friday, the district asked for relief from that portion of our September 10th order that resulted from the loss of its accreditation. They request that we, quote, deem the district in compliance, unquote, with our September 10 order and again stay the removal of the district accreditation. It is this request that brings us here today. I would like for us to discuss the district's accreditation status as a board today, given the unexpected outcome for last Friday, October 1 deadline. But first, I'd like to hear from our commissioner. Commissioner Entis.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Just to give you a bit of an update and perspective from my vantage, this has obviously been a challenging few months, to say the least, for all involved. This continues to be a difficult chapter in what has been over a decade-long effort to improve the quality of education in the district. We never want to get to this step of accreditation being removed, but given how students continue to be impacted, that is where we are today. I hope that this signals the incredible importance and concern we have for this district and the students in it. You know, the reality is things must change. Things must stabilize, and efforts to improve instruction must be allowed to take time and take hold without dramatic pendulum swings. My team has been working alongside both parties to try and facilitate a productive path forward. Unfortunately, they could not get to an agreement by the deadline on Friday. We are hopeful they still might be able to get there eventually. My team continues and will continue to do what is necessary and within CDE's authority to support the students in the district. But now we really need both parties to put aside their differences and get back to what's important, and that's what's happening in the classroom. It is important, and I want to make sure the public, the staff, and everyone understands that losing accreditation does not immediately impact the day-to-day operations of the school. The doors will still be open, funding continues, and students, teachers, and families should continue to go to school, continue to focus on their studies. This is effectively asking adults to work together and do it expediently. So that is all I have, board members. Thank you. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Board Member Commissioner. No, you're not a board member. Board Commissioner Anthony. Before we have a discussion, there's just a couple, I want to reiterate just a couple of things. This is about the students' improved learning. This is about their safety. This is about having quality schools in this community. It has been a worry for many, many years. This is about supporting the teachers in Adams 14, adding tools to their toolbox of skills to improve outcomes for kids. And I speak for myself, but probably for my colleagues, that this is frustrated that so much of this is about the adults. And so I'm going to chime in with the commissioner and say it's time for the adults to work together to try to figure out a way to make this work so that the work continues. There are many good things that go on in Adams 14, and we want that to continue. So I'm going to go around and ask each of you to share your thoughts and questions. But first, I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Board Member
Madam,
Durham, do you want to?
Madam Chair, I'd actually like to make a motion.
I'm sorry, I called on Board Member Durham.
All right.
But your mic is on. You're muted, sir. Mr. Durham, you're muted. Ms. Maramba, can you help Mr. Durham? Several of us are here in the office today.
Okay, does that work? I'm sorry.
It's working, yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Make a motion, which hopefully will be number 3, and I'll read it in its entirety. I move to direct Adams 14 School District to confirm its compliance with our September 10th order by signing a memorandum of understanding by Thursday, October 7th, which includes the following items from MGT's proposed MOU, which is posted as Exhibit A in board docs, which includes the following items within the scope of our 2018 order. That Adams 14, that A14SS has full authority and control over all district management, subject only to local Adams 14 school board authority. That duties, responsibilities, actions of the superintendent are to be redirected to A14SS designation and delegation. A14SS is empowered by the District Board of Education to engage directly with the District Board of Education without intermediation by the superintendent, and all provisions of the external management contract between the district and MGT remain in full force and effect. Upon the signature of the MOU by the district and MGT / A14SS, approval by the board, and submission of a joint statement, the stay of the removal of accreditation will be reinstated.
That's a proper motion, but allow me to clarify for those who are listening. When Mr. Durham speaks to A14SS, he is speaking to essentially a subsidiary of MGT. Am I correct, sir?
That is correct.
Yeah, I think that might be easier for some folks who haven't gotten that particular acronym. So that's a proper motion. Do I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. So now discussion. Let me go down the line. Board Member McClellan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know the commissioner spoke to the need for the parties to set aside their differences. One thing I think it's important for us to recognize now is that the local school districts, Adams 14, has a fiduciary obligation to the taxpayers, and that some of the demands placed upon them by the private contractor that prevented us from receiving an MOU signed by both parties included a hold harmless for any claims known or unknown, and demands to renegotiate the terms of the $500,000 bonus that they would like to receive, as well as perhaps attempts to block any forensic audit. I would like a confirmation from our legal counsel that I've stated that correctly. If I have not, I certainly want to know on the record before we go any further.
I think that's a fair summary.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Tollison. For that reason, I would like to offer a replacement motion, given that we already do have one party, the only party over whom we appear to have authority, if I'm understanding correctly, and that is the local district, Adams 14. To my understanding, and again, Ms. Tollison, please correct me if I am wrong, it is my understanding that they already were willing to agree to and sign off on all of the provisions required by our September 10th, 2021 order. If that is not correct, will you let me know so I can make sure that I'm processing the information correctly before I go any further?
You know, I'll add, we've gotten nuggets of information about the negotiations between the parties, and that is, I'm just going to say that's my understanding because I'm not there, right?
All right, so I'd like to make a replacement motion, and I will try to include within my replacement motion language that allows for that understanding. I move to find that by restoring its lead partner's authority and access, the district has made a good faith effort to comply with our September 10th, 2021 order, and thus reinstate the stay of the removal of the district's accreditation upon receipt of an MOU signed by Adams 14 local district representatives, regardless of whether the other party signs off on those provisions which are necessary to comply with our September 10th, 2021 order. And that is my replacement motion. And before I seek a second, I would like to explain that if we do not recognize the local district's already demonstrated willingness to act in good faith and to agree with the requirements of our 2021 September 10th order, we are placing them right back in the position they already were in, where a private party may make demands that put them at odds with their fiduciary obligation to the taxpayers and citizens of their district. Thank you.
I'm waiting for.
I'll second, Ms. Lisa.
Thank you. Colleagues, do you want to make comments on this, or do you want to take a vote on the substitute motion? Ms. Maramba, will you call the roll?
Board Member Durham.
No.
Board Member Skarziga.
Yes.
Board Member Esser.
Yes.
Board Member McClellan.
Yes.
Board Member Rankin.
No.
Board Member Shuffle.
No.
Board Member Schroeder.
No.
So that fails. The 4-3 vote in the negative.
Thank you. Can we go back to the original motion, please? I suppose you finished speaking, Board Member McClellan?
No, Madam Chair, given that that's now the only motion on the floor, I would at least like to speak to it. My concern is that while this includes provisions that may satisfy our September 10th, 2021 board order, I am concerned that it may not be clear enough to the private party, the for-profit manager firm, MGT, and it may not be clear enough to the Adams 14 local district that this board may not intend to place the local district right back in the position of having to weigh whether or not they can go forward and still meet their fiduciary obligation to the taxpayers and the citizens of their district, where it puts them at odds with the demands on the part of the private contractor, demanding a hold harmless for any claims known or unknown, demands to renegotiate the $500,000 bonus, regardless of whether we have test data to allow for that, and the potential blocking for any forensic audit. I find those elements to be troubling and concerning, and I just would like to hear from Mr. Durham whether it is his intent to signal to the parties that those kinds of provisions are not, and also the specter of the requirement to potentially renegotiate the contract in part or in total on a monthly basis through some monthly agreement or monthly jointly signed agreement that may be demanded. How does your motion protect the local district from the very concerns that they could not sign off on that bring us here today?
Madam Chair.
Board Member Durham.
Thank you. The answer is really a simple one, and it's the answer is just say no. If the board should conclude, the local board should conclude that any of the demands that you just enumerated are included in a final demand statement from the contractor, they have the right certainly to say no. The problem with your motion was not that the board didn't have a right to say no, but you rewarded their misbehavior by automatically restoring their accreditation. And that is completely inappropriate. I believe that the misbehavior and the violation of what I'm confident is a fiduciary responsibility of the Adams County Board, and that was to follow the order to which they agreed and to use the dispute resolution mechanisms which were included in that order. They violated that fiduciary obligation. You have put them, your motion would put them essentially in a place where they have faced no penalty for their misbehavior. And to go one step farther, it would appear that they could now continue to manage the district by themselves, which they admitted in their signing of the original order. They agreed that they did not have, as the state review panel noted, the ability to properly manage the district. So your motion would leave the children in this district at the mercy of a board that has ceded its authority to manage the district because they failed the competency standard to do so. So the problem with your motion is they have every right to say no. And if they do say no, they'll be back in front of this board. But I don't want them back in front of this board with their accreditation automatically restored as a reward for their misbehavior in creating a crisis. And I believe, I can't prove at the present time, I believe that their violation of the order was deliberate. They intended to create a crisis. The crisis has damaged not only the district, but our Department of Education. It has cost our staff hours, probably thousands of hours of work unnecessarily by their failure to meet their fiduciary obligation to comply with this board's order. So you intend to reward their misbehavior. Their misbehavior does not deserve to be rewarded. I might agree that with your comments that some of the demands of the contractor are likely to be perceived, and certainly perceived by me in some cases, to be inappropriate. So if the district decides to reject, and they very well might, and I don't know that they should suffer any penalty for rejecting those demands, but they should suffer penalties for what they did earlier, and we should not restore their ability to mismanage the district as they've done for the previous 10 years. So that's why I was opposed to your motion, and that's why this motion is made. I think this motion clearly indicates what we believe are the proper things that should be restored in an agreement between the parties. But we don't have a right to dictate or prevent people from asking for other things. Adams 14 may decide to ask for other things. That's outside our purview. And we'll have a chance to judge that if they come back with something that we think is inappropriate. But at least we'll be judging it, if this motion passes, we'll be judging it from the perspective that there's a recognition that they violated our original order, that there are consequences to the violation of that order, and before their accreditation can be restored, they're going to have to find another manager. We are going to have to approve of another manager. I think the effect of your motion could very well be that they would contend that they're no longer required to have a manager. So I don't think that your motion properly considers the consequences and the very adverse consequences to children, not just in Adams 14, but throughout the state of Colorado, if it becomes clear that an order of this board delivered lawfully under our accreditation laws and rules can be summarily dismissed and ignored by the actions of a rogue board of education.
Mr. Durham, if I may, and I do appreciate your comments. In the event that we see these parties before us again, and they do just say no to demands on the part of the private contractor that the district finds are at odds with their fiduciary obligation to their taxpayers and citizens and stakeholders, what then? What if there are more demands that the district cannot responsibly agree to? Won't we simply, how is that different from the situation we find ourselves in now, given that that Adams 14 local district has made a good faith effort to restore MGT, despite the fact that they report that MGT is continually trying to ask for more money and changes in the terms of the contract that the district cannot responsibly agree to?
If that happens, the district will be back in front of us. If motion 3 passes, they will be back in front of us, and we will have the opportunity to restore their accreditation on conditions that we have thought through at the time. Conditions, for example, that they find a manager of which we approve. Perhaps a condition that they voluntarily surrender their exclusive chartering authority until they're a district that is properly accredited and is off the accountability clock. There can be a number of conditions imposed by this board in a thoughtful way that will hopefully protect the students. Adams 14 is not obligated to make any additional payments or agree to make any additional payments, and they're not obligated to waive their rights. They don't have to do that. But the fact that they do that does not automatically deserve. They do not deserve to be rewarded for the behavior that created this problem. And I think the problem they created is, as I have watched what our staff has had to do in the last couple of months, it is appalling that the Adams 14 board put our staff through it. And I suspect many of the staff members of the district have gone through the same machinations and have had to put in the same extra time and have had their attention diverted from the important things about, number one, about seeing if we can't educate children. What I want to make sure is that this board understands that we have a fiduciary obligation to those students. And by restoring the accreditation of Adams 14 without ensuring that a better educational mechanism is in place in Adams 14 is a mistake, and your motion did just that.
Mr. Durham, could you clarify for people who are listening exactly what was the initial event sometime, I believe, in August that caused all this to begin, because we just speak of it in generalities, but I'm not sure that
Well-
folks know what happened in Adams 14.
Well,
that
the
started-
specific event was that the original board order of some 18 months ago required Adams 14 that if there was a dispute with the manager and they wanted a modification to, or for example, even a modification went so far as to eliminate the manager, that they come to the board and that the board would give them a hearing as to whether or not that change was appropriate. Instead of doing that, the Adams 14 board and superintendent unilaterally locked out the contractor without consultation from the CDE staff or the State Board of Education. So it is that event that triggered all of the subsequent heartache.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification. I'm not sure everybody knows how this all began. They just got into the middle of it. Board Member Esser.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think if the
Whoops.
Your volume's off.
You muted.
Thank you, Member Durham and Madam Chair. I clicked myself off. I think if you're watching as a member of the public or possibly a parent in Adams 14, this is all very confusing, and both Member McClellan and Member Durham gave good examples of what has been going on. There's plenty of adult issues going around, blame to pass around. Judiciary trust, doing well with the finance of the district is all well and good, but this was more about the children from the beginning. This was about how well the children were learning and whether or not they could demonstrate that to others who were interested in those scores. And I think that's where we need to get back to. I'd love to hear from Dr. Hannaford as far as what's going on right now in the district, as far as instruction, before I can make a decision here. Is that possible, Commissioner Antis?
Yes, Dr. Hannaford, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Hannaford. I really would like to know what pieces of what was already put in place are continuing in the district, or have we turned over everything and we're starting over?
Sure, I'll be happy to give you an update. So what I can share from September 10th to October 1st is that the CDE staff has been monitoring the district's response to the state board's September 10th order. And so we've been doing that through twice weekly meetings with MGT and district leadership and regularly scheduled school visits. And then, of course, we have worked hard to make ourselves available to participate in any conversations that the parties have requested. And so during this time period, CDE staff have observed that work in the schools has restarted in several areas, and I'm going to outline some of them here.
Thank
you. So first, on September 14th, we observed that the district sent a return to work message to all staff that MGT was back and that they are to have access to schools again. And so MGT staff returned to schools and the district office. In paying attention to the partnerships that they had, we know that they had partners such as the University of Virginia, UVA, and to partner, and they also returned to work in the schools. It is important to note that the Adams 14 board has not yet approved the continuation of the UVA contract or the two-partner contract. Other evidence that work restarted in the schools and the districts includes that all the MGT literacy coaches were back in buildings and classrooms. We observed that the district executive directors met with MGT turnaround specialists, and the specialists were directing the work. On the 28th of September, CDE staff made a visit to the Adams City High School, and we observed the MGT staff, the school leadership, and the district staff. They all attended and confirmed that some coordinated work had been occurring, and that MGT had created support plans for each of the departments at the high school. And we also observed that MGT has approved hiring and staff placement decisions, such as the interim principals of Adams City High School and Central Elementary School. And then we learned today that both MGT and Adams 14, they both confirmed today that the district paid MGT's past due invoices. A few other things that we've been observing in this time period. We observed that the district and MGT leadership drafted a process for discussing and resolving concerns, as well as a process for daily operational decision-making at the school levels. I would say it was also evident to the CDE staff that the chief academic officer and MGT staff lead have coordinated during weekly and or sometimes daily meetings to address issues. And we also observed that MGT staff attended the Adams 14 board meetings, and on one specifically, September 14th, at the local board meeting, the superintendent asked the MGT project lead to approve the proposed agenda. So at the same time, there continue to be challenges with the external management partnership. The time that the MGT staff were not in the building delayed some planning and communication processes, and structures between MGT leadership and district leadership are not in a consistent and necessary place. So to kind of detail out that a little bit more, I can provide you some examples. So the first being on September 16th, the MGT project lead requested standing meetings with the superintendent, and it's our understanding that these meetings have either not been scheduled or not fully attended by the superintendent. Also on September 16th, the project lead directed the superintendent to reinstate all the standing cabinet meetings that the superintendent canceled. However, the cabinet meetings were not instated as of September 27th to our knowledge. The MGT project lead directed the superintendent to not cancel a due process training for principals and to move forward with an introductory professional development on teacher growth and development plans. However, it is our understanding that neither of those trainings occurred. A few more to point out, the MGT project lead requested invites to standing meetings, including the cabinet meetings, and it's our understanding that the MGT project lead did not receive those invites. And the MGT project lead did ask for documents related to the recent forensic audit contract. Instead, the superintendent provided the project lead with documents from 2016. And then on the 24th, the last one here, the MGT project lead asked to meet with the Adams 14 board president and superintendent to review expectations and specific requests from the board for an upcoming September 28th work session, but that meeting was not scheduled to our knowledge.
Thank you, Dr. Hannaford. Thank you and your staff for all the work you've done and your ability to give us the information we need to make decisions. It really does feel like there's a lack of cooperation, even though there are some positive areas, which is disappointing, and really adults behaving badly. But that really helped me on my decision. I don't, just for constituent understanding, I don't believe in punishment or reward, but I do believe that a board's decision and the what was put in place needs to be followed, and should they determine another outside such as MGT management company would be more helpful. I do want them to understand it goes through the board first. It just doesn't throw everything overboard and start over again. I think that's very important for all of us to see. So I can't thank you enough, Dr. Hannaford, and you, Commissioner Antos, for all you've done for us and everything you've tried to do for the kids in Adams 14. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Board Member Sheppel.
Yes, thank you. You know, I know this is a difficult, challenging situation, but I think this motion represents forward momentum. I think there's a urgency situated in it such that there's a date certain by which this action must occur. The development of an MOU represents a path forward. The district continues its partnership. There's continuity with what has been going on, and students who are really our first responsibility have the likelihood of continuing some good work and getting individuals in there that can coach teachers, professional development, the implementation of good curricula, data to drive instruction. I mean, there have been some good things going on, and I think what has occurred is unfortunate, and ultimately the students and the educators are the losers in that. So we want to be cheerleading for this district and for their partnership. The key here is coordinated work, coordinated effort. Sounds like there's been challenges there, but I think this motion represents forward momentum that can end up the best at this time for students and teachers in Adams 14. So I appreciate the motion, really appreciate all the work that's gone into it. Very difficult situation, but I think we can get through it. And I think the motion represents good forward momentum to that end.
Thank you. Board Member Rankin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't believe I can add anything new or different to what has already been said, but I would like to make a correction on the motion. And it's the very last paragraph, last sentence, where Board Member Durham said by the board, and he left off the word local board, and that the word local is in that motion. And I just want to make sure the confusion doesn't arise from the state board and the local board.
Thank you. We will note that correction. Is that correct, Mr. Durham?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Board Member Skarzica.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Oh, I like going last because I can just say, oh, what everybody said, and I'm all good. And I don't have to, because I have no written statement. But I do want to explain my support for Member McClellan's motion in that I do concur that I believe the district there was an attempt to take advantage of the situation by the contractor, which I think we all agree was not a good move on their part. And so I think my support for that motion was just to give a word out to everybody that we recognize that and to support that. I'm going to support the motion in front of us because going back to what we talked about at our last meeting, yes, the district did not follow procedure when it came to deciding if they did not want to continue on with this partner, how do you go about that? Well, I think we all agree with that. The idea that I think that what we put forward was an acceptable way out or way path forward for everybody. I still think an MOU between the two for continuity's sake and continuing on at least this third year. I am not set on any fourth year or any future action. I have no ideas, but just to at least get that far, I believe is a way forward. The idea, and I think I'm just going to leave it at that. I think I can go on, but it doesn't matter. I will be supporting the motion for those reasons, so thank you.
Thank you. So I will also support this motion. I will explain why I did not support the prior motion, which is there was nothing in there about serving kids. This was all about fiscal issues. I agree that the vendor tried to pull a fast one on the district. That made us all angry. I get that, but that doesn't mean we take the resources away from the kids. And by lifting accreditation, there would be absolutely no reason for Adams 14 to do anything further. And that was much too troubling for me. So for that reason, I could not support it. I do support the current motion that's on the floor. And I would like to know if there are any other comments or questions that any of you would like to make. Otherwise, we'll call the vote. Colleagues? Board members?
Madam Chair, I do have something I should have mentioned. There's a hole here for me in all of this conversation. And that is, and I know part of it's because of our judicial role, whatever, quasi judicial, but it seems like there's a whole not hearing from parents and from the community.
Yeah.
And maybe this happened like way back, right, before we got on the board and when all of this was occurring, but there's just a hole that I can't figure out because I can't talk to anybody. I hear snippets of conversation. I read things in the newspaper. Maybe we need to ask people to submit their thoughts to the board and we can read them through opinion. But I do want to put that out there that I have a frustration over this process because of that.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Mrs. Marambo, would you call the roll, please?
Board Member Durham.
Yes.
Board Member Skarziga.
Yes.
Board Member Esser.
Yes.
Board Member McClellan.
No.
Board Member Rankin.
Yes.
Board Member Shuffle.
Yes.
Board Member Schroeder.
Yes,
That passes 6-1.
thank you. So thanks to all of you for meeting today on short notice. It's a highly unprecedented and extremely important situation. I appreciate your attention, your dedication to the focus on the needs of the students and the families in Adams 14. We'll stand in adjournment, I hope, until our next regular meeting on Wednesday, October 13th. Thank you.
Thank you.